Welcome to a football show, Monday edition here live from the Cast Collective studio in the heart of Nashville on Music Row. Look at that. Rolled right off the tongue. Zach Lyons, Braden Gall here. Finally, like I've been practicing broadcasting for a while or something. Welcome to the show. Deep dive into the Titans special team. That's right. You didn't know you needed this, but you do. I'm not sure I'm going to call it a third of the game. I think that's a little overplayed. The offense, the defense, and the special teams. I don't think it's an equal 33.3% split. I might go 40-40-20, maybe 45-45-10, but it's an important part of the game nonetheless. And we are going to take
especially with how the Titans play football.
That's a great point, and we'll get to what that means coming up in just a second. So a lot of special teams on the state of the special teams for the Tennessee Titans and what that means for this team moving forward in 2022, something I don't think I've heard anybody talk about anywhere in the world, the Tennessee Titans special team. So deep dive on that, a little Woodside versus Willis, quarterback 3-2, how many are they going to carry in camp kind of conversation, as well as some stadium updates a little bit later on. And of course, some more sports washing taking place with Texas A&M Aggie football, which is my favorite thing. The Aggies financially pushing the boundaries of reality. I love that about Texas A&M. God bless you. Welcome to the SEC. It only took you 10 years, guys. Before we do that, of course, tell everybody what they should do to get involved in the product.
You got to go to the 440 Sports YouTube page, go in there, subscribe, turn on notifications, then go to the Twitter page for Braden Gall for F Words Pod and for 440 Sports, and turn on those Twitter notifications and share this show with everybody that you know and love and hate.
Make sure you bookmark BroadwaySportsMedia.com as well. They got good subscription stuff up there. They got gear and swag, all kinds of great podcasts as well. So make sure you check out all that great stuff. Occasionally, Zach will make an appearance as a writer, so you can get all kinds of good stuff over there. Checking out Broadway Sports Media. And of course, before we do anything else, our title sponsor, the Kingston Group, BuildKG.com is the website. Locally owned, award-winning, custom home and remodeling firm. That is all you need to know. We live in a city that desperately needs construction work done well and done with trustworthy processes. So have a conversation. Kingston Group, BuildKG.com. If you own a home, don't make any decisions before you check out the Kingston Group. Okay. Happy Father's Day, by the way, to everybody out there who celebrated over the weekend. I'm wearing my Father's Day gift. I've got my little tiny tomato right there on the.
What does the tomato represent? I don't.
Well, I am the embodiment of the crunchy East Nashvilleian, I suppose. We have Tomato Fest over there. We have the best. By the way, I tweeted this out, and I want to make sure, if you don't know this and you're new to the area and you happen to be catching the show, we have the greatest heirloom tomatoes in the country. We grow them in this region, whether it's South Kentucky into Middle Tennessee. So that is why Tomato Fest has been taking place in Nashville for the better part of 2 decades. So, of course, you got to have a good tomato hat. So my daughters went out and bought me a tomato hat for Father's Day. So
it's not because you kind of resemble a tomato?
That's hilarious. Do you want me to come back to you on this? Because I feel like, although I do look red pretty easily in this world, you got some tomato vibes going on too over there.
Yeah,
buddy, right? Just settle down.
Just a little toasty from the weekend.
You're a golfer. I'm jealous. Yeah. I'm jealous of the golfing. I took my father to, and if you Nashville SC fans are watching, I took my father to Geodis. It was his first trip. Nice Father's Day outing for the two of us. But first loss at home by Nashville SC in 25 matches. I think it's 3 years since they lost.
It's 500 and something days. I know that. It was like 592 or something.
I'm not going to dox my father and give you his the phone number and the address. But if you can find Rick Gall somewhere on the internet, go ahead and blame him for the loss last night. He's not invited back. So we've accomplished that for Nashville SC. Okay. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Special teams, Zach. Let's start with, what do people need to know? What is the percentage of the game? How important are this section of the game? How much weight should we be putting on Titans special teams in terms of chances at winning a Super Bowl?
Well, I think it's pretty important the way that this team plays football, because we've talked about it before. We've kind of hammered it home. They are a defensive-minded team with a defensive-minded head coach who likes to run the ball. And at that point, you have to play good special teams. You have to be able to put the other team at a disadvantage if your passing game isn't working, because we've seen that happen, right? And the issue that we have been seeing is that they have not put the pressure on the opposing team as much as they need to be. And that matters when you're heading into the Super Bowl. Kicking matters, obviously. I mean, you got 1 point, games decided by 1 point, games decided by 3 points.
You think that mattered for Cincinnati? Special teams?
Well, I mean, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, then the rookie kicker made
Yeah.
like all kinds of big
When you're
plays
talking about
for
it, yeah, if you'd rather have, no offense to Fat Randy, because I'm a big Fat Randy supporter, but you got Evan McPherson.
You're a big Fat Randy
big Fat Randy supporter. But when you got Evan McPherson doing what he was able to do all year long, that put the team in position to win.
Big Fat Randy.
Fat Randy.
Got to have integrity.
Got to
have integrity. So I think I would go about 15 to 20% of the game is special teams. I think the kickoff world has changed dramatically over the last few years because it's just not the same impact as it once was on the game. We'll get into some of those numbers. We'll get into all the numbers for the punt and punt return stuff as well. And we can kind of start this. Steve Hoffman was the special teams coordinator under Mike Mularkey. He was fired midway through 2017, Mularkey's final season. And the current special teams coordinator, Craig Ackerman, was the assistant at that time. He was elevated mid-season, roughly, give or take, and he took over and then was retained by Mike Vrabel. So there is some. I just want to kind of make sure everybody knows the path for the special teams coordinator.
You just also remember that from 2013 to 2015, he was also on staff as an assistant special teams coordinator and left and got hired by the San Diego Chargers for a 1-year stint as special teams coordinator.
And I'm assuming you have some data.
Oh, I have some data.
How those Chargers did. Can I start with just, let's do the most obvious one, which is field goal and field goal kicking and scoring points efficiently with that position. I just want to say, here's my first take on this, and then I'll let you go on what should be done about it. My biggest issue with this situation for the Titans is actually Luke Falk and Cole McDonald. Those are my two biggest problems.
I know where you're going with this, and I agree.
Because with late 6th, 7th round picks, whatever it may be, just give or take, you can generally get maybe the best kicker on the board, maybe the second best kicker on the board with a 6th round pick. And to me, that is a value find at a important position. Whereas they took two guys that had almost 0% chance of making the roster and doing anything for this team. I think those were two major screw ups by the group, John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, whatever. Those were two picks right there in particular that could have been used, and we could add Brady Breeze to this, I guess. But I just think the quarterback is even more rare that they make the team. That is where they should have taken a kicker, in my opinion.
Especially when Rodrigo Blankenship was still on the board, and he was the consensus best kicker in, I believe, what was that, 2019, 2020, whenever it was. You look at it and you look at their field goal percentage and extra point percentage, and this is dating back to San Diego Chargers. And the highest they've ever been ranked in field goal percentage was in 2018 at 14th. They were ranked 14th field goal percentage. And then you go all the way to extra point. The best they've been is 8th. And that was in 2020. But in 2021, they ranked 21st. In 2019, 13th. 2018, 28th. 2016, 24th. And if you go back and look at the numbers, they're one of the teams, they're kind of like the Chiefs for whatever reason. Now, the Chiefs play a different style of close games. Their close games are like 34 to 31.
If they miss a kick, they can come back and get you a lot faster.
When the Tennessee Titans have played a lot of games where the game is decided by 3 points or less. Now, they've won a lot of games in that time frame, but think about the games that they could win more in this. And to me, this goes to what you said, which is about them wasting picks on these people that are not going to make an impact on your team when you can get a kicker, a value kicker.
Now, so Evan McPherson, the Bengals, we already mentioned him. He was the 5th round pick, 149th overall. And what's interesting is John Robinson has a track record of drafting pretty productive players in the 5th round. So I'm not even suggesting anybody should have taken Evan McPherson in the 5th round. It is the specifically 6th and 7th round players that they have missed.
Well, let me say this. You can make an argument that John Robinson, seeing the state of his kickers from 2016 or 2018 all the way to 2020, even really 2017 and 2016, because he's been around that long, that he should have taken Evan McPherson in the 5th.
I absolutely could argue that. I think Blankenship is another one.
Yeah, and to me, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking you've seen the ups and downs that this team has gone through since Ryan Succop has left, and it's the same with punter. I'm really nervous that Brett Kern is done, even though he's the MVP,
drop off or whatever.
The MVP punter, the most valuable punter, and he's been that way. And I love Brett Kern, but there is a trend happening, and then you see the guys that they have picked to replace him off the street. It's never been good.
I just think that this is about, like, it's not risk reward's not the right. I'm sure there's some, hedge fund manager that will give me the right exact terminology for this, but it's about how much value you can get with minimal investment.
Right.
And that's all that this is. And
that's really all kickers and punters are anyway.
Right. And if you package that with the percentage opportunity that a quarterback specifically, this is why I look at Falk and McDonald specifically as the two screw ups, because quarterbacks specifically, the percentage chance that they are going to be a starter, much less make it onto your roster in the 6th and 7th round. To me, that's where you want to take a safety in the 7th round. Maybe he makes the roster probably at a much higher rate than quarterbacks.
What adds more points? Luke Falk and Cole McDonald, or Rodrigo Blankenship and Evan McPherson, right?
So, no, I completely agree. And I understand we've kind of beaten the horse here. Suck Up in 2018 was 26 of 30. The law firm of Suck Up, Santos and Parkey, 8 of 18. They kicked 44%, which is,
and they didn't learn anything from that, right? Like, that to me is what drives me nuts, is that this team did not learn anything from that horrendous year. And I think it's a real blind spot. It's odd because, like I said, the way that he plays football and the decisions that Mike Vrabel makes on 4th down when he knows his kickers are not reliable as a whole, and he continues, instead of going for it on 4th and short, will continue trying to kick from 49 yards out. That has been the most maddening thing about Mike Vrabel, is his 4th down special team decision making with the personnel he's been stuck with.
And I think this is what you're saying. I would argue you should just be going for it on 4th and 3 inside the 40-yard line, almost all the time.
Especially in these situations.
Right. Gostkowski was the next year, 18 to 26, mildly better, but not much, still 31st in the NFL. And then Randy Bullock last year was 26 to 31, up over 80%. So they had a bounce back year in terms of actually making field goals last year. Brett Kern is interesting because they were 5th and 2nd in the NFL in punting under Ackerman's first 2 seasons. Those are 2 seasons where Kern was fully healthy and played all 16 games. Then he missed 3 games 2 years ago, and he missed 3 more. So he's missed 6 games, 3 in each of the last 2 seasons, and their punting took a couple of yards hit, dropped from top 5 into the middle of the pack, lower 3rd. I am curious what you it's hard to answer, is the punter plateau? Is he going to hit a plateau? It's really hard to answer that about a guy that doesn't have much physical contact.
It's also that the fact that he's been injured too. How much of this is injuries and not being able to be at full strength? So,
and wasn't one of those was the fake field goal where he got destroyed by Zach Cunningham, right?
Right. So at this point, you're on
Devin White.
He's on a lifeline, right? I mean, Brett Kern, they have obviously redid his contract to make sure that if Brett Kern does not bounce back, they can get out of the contract and let him go.
Okay.
But how do you still replace that? If he's not the guy, how do you remedy that in season? You've now made it harder in season to remedy that if he turns out to be not the guy quickly.
Well, and there's very few guys who drafted I don't have this in front of me. So
there were punters flew off the board.
I know who drafted the guy out of San Diego State. He was the best punter in modern college football history.
Yeah.
I can't remember who drafted him. I'll have to double check.
The Ravens drafted Jordan Stout, because I read about that this morning. I'm not sure who drafted Matt Ariza or
that guy. There's a lot of talent. Again, you don't have to invest high capital to solve these 2 problems.
Right.
You just have to commit a 5th round pick and a 7th round pick, and you can get what you need. I don't Kern is interesting to me because I don't think there's any way to determine whether or not you know how you can just tell Matt Ryan's arm is about to fall off. It's hard to tell whether or not Kern has reached the end. I think they should give him every opportunity to prove that he's still as good as he was in the past.
He wasn't consistent last year. How much of that is injuries piling up? What has he done this offseason? So that will be interesting. Nobody's asked that question, but it'll be interesting to see where Brett Kern is at mentally and health wise, because he's 37 if I'm not mistaken.
He's not young.
Yeah.
How do you feel relative to the other couple of seasons here with the Kern Bullock combination? Because they weren't terrible last year.
Yeah, I feel better about our kicking situation and we'll get into it a little bit later about what Craig Ackerman has specifically said about what Fat Randy's working on.
36, by the way. Brett Kern just turned 36.
Yeah, I worry more about Brett Kern than I do anything else, and this shouldn't be an offense that punts a lot, but this could easily turn into a situation where Brett Kern is needed a lot, and if he's not getting because he got some good money kicks in last year, and people he wasn't great. I contended that, but he wasn't as bad as what everybody makes him out to be.
No, they were 24th in average punt yards
Right.
last year, which is one of his worst years
Yeah.
ever. But again, missed 3 games.
He missed 3 games, and how much of that was
Injury.
the other guys and all that kind of stuff. So,
Exactly.
My big issue with this whole special teams unit for the last few years, outside of the field goal, because to me, field goal has been the biggest issue. Kickers have been the biggest issue. Has been the kick returners and punt returners.
So I want to get to what Ackerman can do with that, but I want to ask you one more question about the field goal before we move on to that, because we want to talk about Craig Ackerman and his role and the future with him in this organization. Do you not put the field goal kicking on John Robinson and Mike Vrabel more than what?
Yeah,
unless your job is to teach proper leg motion, how can you? Does that?
Yeah, I think that the field goal is strictly on the shoulders of not having the talent at kicker,
right?
And
Okay.
and listen, I think Fat Randy's fully capable of doing what you need him to do and doing it at a level where this team could be successful. I mean, we saw it last year. I mean, he rarely missed a real field goal that you really needed, maybe once or twice. When you look back at maybe it's not good to compare to what we've had, seen on the field, but when you are looking at what's better, who's out there that's better besides maybe taking a chance on a rookie, who's out there that's better? Right. And Caleb Shudak? Is that?
Yeah, all 5'5" of him.
He was booming kicks right until he got injured.
Until he got hurt, and then they just started. It was like,
yeah. So now it's kind of like what it was with Tucker McCann. He was looking good, and then he gets injured. So at some point, I think next year, if you're not seriously considering investing in the kicker position long term, I don't know why a team like this is devaluing that position.
And Gostkowski was interesting because he made a lot of clutch kicks.
Yeah,
but then he missed a bunch of just
Gimmies.
Regular ones. Yeah. So let's get your kick return is what you want to kind of focus on here. And kick return is such a weird and punt return for that matter as well. They did have their best year under Ackerman last year in terms of punt return. We are talking about fractions of a yard here of average, like 9.8 yards per return versus 8.8 yards per return. So punt returning, they have gotten better in that situation. They've not really gotten better in kick return. They've gotten worse in kick return. So what is it that he should be doing to fix the return problems on the receiving end of the ball?
Find someone who can actually return kicks. I mean, Chester Rogers was some of the biggest blunders and idiots that I've seen in the Titans uniform returning kicks since Bishop Sankey and Darius Reynaud.
Didn't Reynaud have a really long 108 yarder or something?
Well, no, I think I'm pretty sure
Darius fumbled in the end zone.
Darius Reynaud is the one that took it out on the Pittsburgh Steelers game. They went back into the end zone and kneeled.
Oh, that's right.
So I think you're thinking Dexter McCluster may have.
Maybe you're right.
But Chester Rogers, we talked about this off air, before the show. If you're in the end zone and you got the ball and you get the ball on a kick return in the end zone, kneel it. Don't take it out.
I totally agree. Belichick did this by strategically trying to attack the kickoff and make you return it to a shorter field or whatever. I think this is a no-brainer. This is a cut and dried, kick the field goal when you have a chance to go up 3 scores. There's not any strategy to this with me. It's if you are in the end zone and you catch the football, take a knee. That's it.
Well,
that's it.
You would think that it's not brain surgery, but these kick returners tend to think it is. And when you're talking about, we'll talk a little bit more about Trenton Cannon, but there is nobody on here that has proven that they are the guy that can be a kick returner and punt returner and do something well. It does not mean that someone like Kyle Phillips or Reggie Roberson or maybe Racey McMath hasn't really proved it yet. But
I could see Phillips being a good punt returner.
Yeah. We don't know what those guys are, but the people that are on the roster that have experience right now, which is, I think, just really Trenton Cannon and Mason Kinsey has some preseason experience, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Have proven that they are no better than Chester Rogers. So until that's fixed, this doesn't get fixed.
Well, and Darrington Evans, I think part of the reason they drafted him was they thought that he could do some of that, and it just he never was able to see the field. So that kind of is what it is. I think. Is it weird to just not really, and you worry about this stuff, and that's what makes you great. I just, as a football fan, I find myself ignoring kickoff and kickoff coverage almost exclusively. Maybe that's not smart. Maybe that's not the right thing to do. But it's just like, what are we doing with this play now?
I was like that until this last season. I was one of the guys like, oh, here comes your kicker controversy. Who gives a shit about the kickers? So, and then finally last year, I just kind of opened my eyes and I was like, looking at Chester Rogers, who changed drastically from what he was in the preseason to the regular season. Like in the preseason, he looked great.
Yeah.
Regular season, you're like, what the hell are you doing, you moron?
So Titans the last 4 years. Let me ask you a touchback question.
Okay.
This is the kind of stuff you get with no empty calories on this show.
There you go.
Touchback questions. 4 years under Craig Aukerman, their touchback percentage: 16th in the NFL, 26th in the NFL, 19th in the NFL, 17th in the NFL. So basically, average to below average every single year under Craig Aukerman. Now, some of that is just is your kicker capable of doing it? So here's my question, though, because I think this is what the interesting strategy is, because Belichick would argue you don't want a touchback. Do you want to just guy that hits it out of the back of the end zone every time and just makes that play null and void, removes the opportunity for a long return or an injury, and just cut your losses and give him ball on the 25? Or do you want a guy that can kick it 5,000 miles in the air, land it on the 4, and you can tackle him inside the 20? Like, how many drives is that actually stopping from scoring versus just kicking it out of the
think
end
you
zone?
Want the second guy. The problem is that I don't think any of these guys are doing that on purpose. like maybe Fat Randy is trying to, make sure that there's not a lot of touchbacks, because he's probably the most viable kicker they've had in, I guess, since probably Craig. Maybe Ryan Suckup would be towards the
Suckup and Bullock were about the same.
Yeah.
In their good years, they were about the same.
And to me, they're average kickers. So
Yeah.
I don't know if really that they're doing that on purpose. But Greg Joseph and Cody Parkey, those guys just couldn't kick it that far.
I guess that's my question is, you have two sort of strategies to employ. Like, do you want to do the pooch, risk a little bit of injury, but maybe stop them 7 to 8 to 10 yards shorter than they would normally start the drive, versus just take all risk, take all unknown out of the equation, and just go out the back of the end zone every time, put them on the 25 and call it a day? And I
would think Mike Vrabel wants to do the latter.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to say.
I could agree with that. So again, they were first in the NFL in kick return back in 2018 under Aukerman. Again, that's because they scored on one touchdown. And this is what I was kind of getting at. You look at the best teams that are the best at returning kicks in the NFL, top 4 or 5 each year, they're the ones that got the touchdown. Just the one touchdown skews your average to the point where you're at one of the best returning teams in the league. So it's such a little payoff to have a great kick returner, especially if he's another weapon on your offense. Like, if you got a player, it's just for one touchdown a year is your best case scenario, and that's 10% of the league that's doing that. I don't know. Like, I just think that kickoff is not something you should be investing in. It needs to be
your
losses in that area.
You're investing in it when you invest in your field goal percentage.
Yeah.
Like, it's a byproduct of, if you're getting a good kicker with a strong leg that's accurate, you are in a byproduct investing in your touchback percentage.
You want to talk punt return, or do you want to talk coverage?
I think we're good on both of those, really, because I'll get into coverage teams on when we talk about who's some names to watch. What are they doing to improve?
Gotcha. So in terms of punt return, they were 14th in the NFL, 13th in the NFL, 16th in the NFL, and then last year 9th in the NFL.
I think that's just such a kind of a weird. I think it's a weird thing to try to break down, just because that all depends on who the other punter is, right? It's not really.
That's true.
I mean, how far
Cam Batson was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Is that everybody's just fine, nobody's good.
That seems like an issue. All right, so you want to get into coverage then, or do you have more to offer on the?
I think
offensive side of things.
How much of this is Craig Aukerman's fault, and how much of this is the players' fault? And because now we pretty much have broken down that this is outside of Brett Kern. This has been a pretty below average unit as a whole, year in and year out. Why do you think he keeps getting the leash that he does? Because even dating back to the San Diego Chargers day, it still wasn't a good special teams unit.
I think they were top 10 in punt returns best last year. They were top 10 in kick coverage last year. So, like, there are some small areas of incremental improvement. And I think personally, if I'm John Robinson, I'm taking the blame for some of that, because I didn't draft a kicker. I didn't draft a guy who can kick it out of the back of the end zone. So to me, I would give him more leash, because it's my fault that I didn't give him a good kicker. Is that an excuse, or is that a reason? It could be both.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think that them constantly ignoring it is a problem, because it feels like to me they kind of like, okay, we know our special teams suck. Let's fire this assistant coach.
Yeah.
Like at some point we do have to look at what Craig Ackerman has done with what he's given, and it's not much.
Yeah.
And besides Brett Kern, who anybody at the time that Brett Kern was doing well can get what he was giving them, right? I mean, like
I mean, that's my issue with the bad too. Like,
yeah,
if you got a bad kicker and a great punter, how much are either of those two things related to the guy teaching you? And I guess you're the coach, you have to take the blame. You wear it around your neck like
Right.
every position coach does. But I just don't. I don't know. It's hard to quantify what unless they just have these brilliant fake field goal calls, or they're like blocking. Because again, like the teams that were so bad at special teams, like the Packers and Niners last year, for example, were so bad at special teams, or the Packers were so bad at special teams, they knew it was going to cost them, and then it cost them right in the middle of the biggest game of the year when the Niners had some of the best special teams. I think it's hard to say like what made that. What are the strategies? What are the tactics that person is deploying to make that unit so much better? There's teams in college football that do this, that are just great at special teams. And I think to me, that's the amount of work you put in. Like Virginia Tech under Frank Beamer was just blocking punts all the time and blocking kicks and had all these fancy trick plays. I think that's like, are you going to invest time and energy into that and practice it a lot? Whereas in the NFL, I think it's probably more valuable for your other players to get reps doing other things. I don't know. When I say best special teams in the NFL, who comes to mind? Belichick? Like,
I mean, I think, the Ravens are probably high up there, and a lot of that has to do with Justin Tucker, but that also has to do with their head coach coming from a special teams background.
yeah.
The Chiefs are probably high up there as well. Dave Taub, who is their special teams coach, has gotten head coaching interviews. He's very well respected around the league. He's also, I think, their assistant head coach. So to me, there's a lot, when I look at this from a perspective of how the team is signing players, right? They value people that can do both. They oftentimes buy players, but they pay players.
We're not to the Texas A&M part yet.
They pay players to come in and be gunners. Like they come in and these guys, okay, yeah, he's
just Darren Bates. This is like having Darren Bates on your team.
Well, it's like what's the guy from Texas, AJ Moore that they got from the Texans? He's obviously a special teams guy. He's not coming in to replace Dane Cruikshank. He's not coming in to be, some special teams or safety backup. He's really here because he does something well for special teams that they have seen on tape.
So to me, that is investing in a specific part of the game that maybe you've struggled in. And I'm okay with that as long as it's not taking away from something else.
Right.
And if that's the strategy, then at least you're trying to give Ackerman better weapons and tools to work with. I kind of am getting to the point where there's no massive, like there's some things that are better, some things that are worse, but basically under 4 years of his leadership at special teams has been about the same, and it's not been great.
And so I think that's the problem.
At some point, do you take the risk to move on from this guy? Again, I'm not trying to like yell about Craig Ackerman here. I'm just saying, like, is there some young wizard out there that you're missing and you could give him a chance and see if it works? Maybe that fails miserably, but at least there's some upside there where you kind of know what this guy is, and he just kind of is what he is right now. It's not very scientific.
I think he's the safe coach. I think that's what you're kind of getting at is like, okay, he's the coach familiar with the staff. He's a safe coach. He has ties here in Nashville at this point. He's been here from 2013, 2015, then been here from 2017 down to 2020. Or 2021. Maybe he's just, it's just kind of like that guy that is hired at a job who doesn't really do anything anymore. He's just they're just waiting for him to leave.
Yeah. This is what I would say, though, to your original point about the style of play that Vrabel wants and the Titans. I think this goes to the whole conversation, which is we've talked a lot about the offense evolving. I don't think we expect that to happen rapidly and in the near future. Maybe if all of a sudden Malik Willis becomes a starting quarterback next year, all bets are off, the offense changes. But by and large, Vrabel's going to be built on defense and running the football, powered, line of scrimmage, trench warfare, blah, 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 blah. You could make special teams part of your identity. And I would argue it's a smart thing to do to make that part of your identity if you're going to be built on defense and running the football. So to me, if you're going to make a change, you also need to invest in the other positions. So if you want to take a big swing at this, it's make a change, draft a punter or a kicker, find out what you got in Kern, and then maybe like more AJ Moore's, like sign some guys that do these things specifically. And again, they weren't terrible in coverage. They were top 10 in kick coverage last year in the NFL. That's not terrible.
No.
So I don't know.
It could have been better if Tracy McMath was actually a good gunner, but
now they were bad in punt. It was their worst year in punt coverage.
Yeah.
So they did a better job covering kicks and a much worse job covering punts. Some of that's Kern maybe having a down year, other punters being in there for a couple games. So again, we're not giving you like specific details like, oh, they need to have a 2-gunner wide system. That's what's going to lead. Like, we're not going to sit here and tell you that that's the system they should run. To me, it's where do you invest resources? And it feels like they have not invested a lot of resources in special teams, and they've sort of left Craig Aukerman to deal with it.
Yeah.
And there needs to be probably something new.
I will say his presser last Tuesday, I believe it was Tuesday, or maybe it was Monday. I thought that there were a lot of good nuggets of where they're trying to make improvements. And one of the improvements that they were talking about making was specifically with Fat Randy was from the 40 to 49 yard line, those kicks that range in that range. Yeah. They call that the money zone, which worries me that a team that is known to play safe football is calling that the money zone, because I would, yeah. But the reason I think that worries me is because I would rather them be thinking that the money zone is the red zone.
Well, I think that, can there be a money zone for a quarterback and a running back and an offense, and a different money zone for kickers?
There can, but that to me tells me that you expect that there's going to be a lot of kicks coming from 40 to 49 because you don't have faith in your offense.
So, okay, I took that totally differently. Yeah. I was standing there and I took it as where the kickers make their money is 40 to 49.
And maybe that's how
meant. I took it.
Okay, so we took it two different ways. So if we look at it,
people taking something two different ways,
crazy. If we're taking it your way, then that's good. And if they feel that that's where they make his money and that's where they're specifically working on him, that's good. And it's really good in the other scenario too. I just get worried that that's the mentality.
So either way, you've taken that. It's good.
It's good.
I'd probably say 40 to 55. Like, I would just say the last chunk of yardage for your field goal kicker is where you need to be great. That is what separates Justin Tucker from somebody else.
Right.
Is the ability to kick, clutch, long kicks. I would get it out.
You got it.
A lot of stupid consonants there. Where else do you think this team can be making some notable improvements?
I think that they were talking about getting vertical and punt returners and kick returners. So what that means is that they catch the ball and they just go straight up.
Get your yards.
Yeah, get your yards and let's get out of there. Some of the problems with some of these other returners that you've seen the Titans have, sometimes they go backwards. Sometimes they like to juke and everything and try to, think it's someone's pressing the B button.
You're not Dante Hall. Okay?
Yeah. They're talking about, because they specifically talked about Kyle Phillips, but getting vertical.
Yep.
And I think that those two areas of improvement outside of, a healthy Kern, because that's technically an improvement, that can help a lot.
Healthy Kern, better from longer range, and a punt returner who gets vertical.
Yeah,
that's
punt
what we're talking
about.
Return,
any return.
And again, if you catch
smarter kick return,
yes, if you catch the football in the end zone, you're done with the play. Take a knee.
And an issue that Chester Rogers had was sometimes he wouldn't call for the fair catch on punt returns. We didn't even cover that. Yeah. So again, a smarter punt return, kick returner that can also get vertical quickly and gain as much yards as he can in a short amount of time.
What's interesting is those things specifically I would put on Craig Aukerman.
Yeah.
Like decision making on fair catches for punts, taking the ball out of the end zone for kickoffs, getting vertical quickly. Like, those things to me are the things you can coach. Like, I don't think you can just coach leg talent, but I think you can coach the decision making process inside special teams. So I think that's an area he should be making an impact.
I think the continued progress that we've seen in that area, which has really been almost a regression, is concerning. Like, if I'm looking at what the decisions that Chester Rogers continually made last year, and you are saying that is something that he can coach, why did it not take after 18 games?
That would be one of the first things I would, if I was anti Craig Aukerman and trying to make a move, that would be one of the first things I would point to is decision making. Yeah, that would be one of the first things that, like you're saying. So anything else you want to make sure we cover for special teams? I think we covered a lot of it. They need to be better. They need to invest in the special teams, And that could be the difference in winning an AFC Championship game or not.
Right.
Like, that's where we could be at with this.
Well,
So,
I think their punt returners, they said, were Mason Kinsey in practice so far. Mason Kinsey, Kyle Phillips, and Amani Hooker. And they specifically said Amani Hooker as a guy that if we need him in a pinch, just to go back there and catch the ball.
yeah, that's. I think the first two guys are and frankly, those first two guys are kind of competing for the same roster spot.
Right.
So,
well, when you go to who he said was competing for kick returner, you got Trenton Cannon, Reggie Roberson, Kyle Phillips, and Racey McMath. The only guy that's overlapping on both of those is Kyle Phillips. So that, to me, again, we're going to the point where Kyle Phillips is probably going to be one of the more impactful rookies.
yeah.
And he specifically mentioned Kyle Phillips getting vertical in all forms of the special teams game.
I like the idea of Kyle Phillips being on the punt return unit. I don't love him on the kick return unit, especially if you're going to use him in the slot and he's one of your primary weapons in that role in the offense. I don't know. Kick return feels far more dangerous to me, even if it's not. It just does. That's where, like, I like Cannon a lot more in that role. I could see Racey McMath, who also is going to be used on coverage teams and is part of like his value to the team to earn a roster spot. If he can add the return thing to it, then it's valuable. I don't want Amani Hooker. Amani Hooker's back there as an emergency. To me, that's what he is. He's back there as an emergency. You don't put your starting safety back there very often.
Here's the thing.
Return.
Here's the thing to me about Trenton Cannon is that last year, and this is basically his career average outside of 1 year in 2019. So he's been returning kicks for teams since I think 17 or 18. He's a 20.5 guy. He's not going to get you up near the 25-yard line if he brings it out. And that's only 0.4 yards better than what Chester Rogers was last year. So he does not move the needle. And I know that this staff has fallen in love with him for whatever reason.
For now.
Because they mention him all the time. But you're also talking about a guy that has fumbled away kickoffs and punts.
Roberson's an interesting one.
Yes.
Because of the speed and because, he might have a spot on the roster as a receiver. Again, we'll see if he can make the team, UDFA and all that stuff. Yeah. But that's an interesting one because of the straight line burner speed. But again, I've almost reached the point where the characteristic I value the most in a kick returner is decision making, not speed now.
Right.
Like, just make the right decision and let's start the drive.
Yeah.
Let's get going. All right. So there's some names to know. I would argue, barring a dramatic improvement and a dramatic investment of resources, that there could be a new situation in special teams next year. Right. Is that what we're kind of?
I mean, pretty much. I think that whatever you see this year is whatever you're going to see next year, and it's probably going to be whatever you see again. Because they're just creatures of habit at this point.
So do you want to talk about wasting taxpayer dollars, or do we want to talk about quarterback roster spots?
Let's go. Let's go to
Woodside versus Malik Willis. You want to do that?
Yeah, let's just do that.
Let's do that real fast here. And because we touched on this last week and we had about a 2-sentence conversation, I thought let's spend a little bit more time on it. And that is that you believe that this team could probably carry 3 quarterbacks into the regular season.
I'd bet $100 that they would.
I'd
probably actually bet more than
I would not bet you on this. Meaning, I kind of agree with you. Here would be my argument for not keeping Logan Woodside. The argument is that Malik Willis, if Ryan Tannehill gets hurt and it's one game, maybe Logan Woodside is a better value for that one game. If Logan Woodside is in for any more than one game or a quarter or even 2 games, I kind of want it to be Malik Willis, because the more reps he gets, the more opportunity he gets in the offense, the more chances he gets to learn and see game speed, the better off this organization is long term. And so if there's any serious injury, I would rather Malik Willis be out there learning and taking reps and taking lumps and maybe making mistakes that he can learn from. And also, does he have enough ability to help you win games in the short term? Maybe he does. Let's see if he, see if he's.
It's kind of like when Lamar Jackson came in for Joe Flacco,
right? And which is identical to this situation.
I mean, you couldn't have. You talked about Joe Flacco and Ryan Tannehill essentially being the same quarterback. So.
They are, and Malik Willis is not Lamar Jackson. He's got a lot of ability, and I just think that. And I don't like the stealing reps conversation from like OTAs, but once you get through the cuts in camp, I want Malik Willis pretending he's a starting quarterback, like in every sense of the word. I want him holding the clipboard. I want him ready to go. I want him practicing with the second team or first team. I want him taking reps. I want him in the meeting rooms being the number 2. Like, I want him champing at the bit to get into the starting lineup and standing on the edge of like, put me in, coach. Like, to me, Logan Woodside does not. I don't even.
He's not exciting.
He does,
I get it.
The arm doesn't. I don't know. I don't think that guy's coming in and winning you 2 games.
I think that how we view it the same way, but I'm not sure that Tennessee views that currently.
Gotcha.
Now that means what it boils down to is Malik Willis coming in from now into training camp, a definitive change and improvement from where he was then to when he is on these drills when they're in full pads and everything, right? So you want to see that improvement. If you see a big jump in Malik Willis's improvement in all forms of the game that they've been working on him,
Like
with,
you're talking footwork and arm slot,
footwork, all that
readings,
stuff. And then I fully believe that he's going to spend this downtime working on all that stuff. So if he continues to work and continues to show improvement, then yeah, they could just ditch Logan Woodside at some point. You know, the problem, the reason I think that they may end up keeping 3 with 2 active is because last year, 91 different players get the injury bug. You never know if Logan Woodside is on your practice squad. He's probably not on your practice squad for long. And obviously, Malik Willis can't go on the practice squad. We all know that.
Right.
So I almost think that they keep 3 just out of caution. Whether that's a good use of resources, we'll see. I mean, again, we'll do an episode on our projected 53 and what it looks like.
Man.
But at this point, I think you're right, though. I think you're right in the sense that if it's more than 2 games, you're probably going to have a better chance to win it with a rookie quarterback who is super athletic and can make deep throws and can run some different plays that maybe even Ryan Tannehill can't run because of his athletic ability.
So this leads me to the in-game active, like in a game, right? Because you, like you said, active 2 is what you're going to have, even if you carry 3. Willis is the guy you want active, though. Like Willis is the guy. No, because hear me out on this. This is what I would say. You want Willis to be prepared enough to be the guy.
Yeah.
And if he is the guy as the backup, then you're not going to be activating Woodside for 3 quarterbacks active in a game anyway, which means if Tannehill gets hurt in the first quarter of a game and you need an emergency guy for 3 quarters, Willis is already that guy because I think you want him to have some packages. I don't think you want to run him like, you don't want to run Wildcat with Malik Willis, but you're going to run him with some packages because he brings something different to the table and he gets some experience, gets his feet wet. So really, what are you talking about here with Logan Woodside? You're talking about a 2-game injury? If that, because if you want Willis for 3 or more, if you want Willis in the game,
you're talking about the level of confidence that Malik Willis has given this team. That's all it is. I mean, right now, I agree with you in theory that Malik Willis would be the better choice.
You don't think they get there with him? You don't think they get there with him?
I don't know if they do. I mean, it's not.
Why don't you know this?
It's not they that I'm concerned about. It is a rookie quarterback that did have struggles in an offense that's not like this. Now, listen.
No, that's
the
totally
optimist.
fair.
The optimist in me, because you just told me a couple weeks ago on the show, because I said that I think it all hinges on Malik Willis's ability whether they become a pass first offense, right?
I agree with you.
Okay, so this again, it's all about Malik Willis's ability. Now, the optimist in me views what he's doing now, the reports that we've heard and all that, and what you've seen in practice tells me that he is trending in that right direction that you were wanting Malik Willis to do.
He's done everything you want him to do to this point.
Right. So he's got to keep doing that. Now, I'm not completely convinced that he can't beat out Logan Woodside. I think he has every chance and ability to do that. But he's going to have to, when the pads come on, 11-11 on drills are there, and he's having to read defenses and before he throws the ball and all that kind of stuff. And this is a very tough defense to go against, right?
Yep.
Even the second or third team defenses are going to be pretty tough because we've talked about the depth last week. So in my mind, I'm thinking and looking at this from a perspective of, okay, he's got it. We've seen it without the pads on. We've seen it with really very little actual having to do it. Can he do it? I think he can. If I was betting, I'm not sure I would bet that this team, the way that we have seen them operate, would go that route.
And I hesitate to say this because I want to like overreact about this, but like if he's not ready to be active and Logan Woodside is your second active quarterback during the season, then I have major questions about drafting him at all. But that seems a little too empty calorie.
Yeah, like, I would say
that's a little too much of an overreaction.
I think
too
that
early.
Eventually you would want to see him be active, but I don't think that if it's the first 4 weeks, first 5 weeks, they may just play it on the safe side.
All right, so
I think it's all about this team playing it safe.
So to your point about how we're trying to project what they're going to be thinking about a guy's potential development.
Yeah. Because we know they obviously want Malik Willis to come in and win the job.
So the question is, and here's, I guess we'll end this conversation on this. When they believe that Malik Willis is capable of being the active backup quarterback on game days, that is the day they can let Logan Woodside go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we're getting at, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means when that day comes where the two active quarterbacks on the roster are Tannehill and Willis, then we know that Logan Woodside is. Listen, he has murdered lots of backup quarterback attempts. Matt Barkley.
That's what I was about to say. But I know that people really hate him. I hate Logan Woodside.
I don't hate him, by the way.
Well, I know you don't, but there's a lot of people that hate Logan Woodside. But I would just caution against wanting Malik Willis just to be active or be the backup quarterback just because he's Malik Willis and not Logan Woodside.
No, I think I've watched Logan Woodside battle in camps for 3 years, and he kind of just beats the guy every time. Yeah. He's just a little bit better than him. He is not better than Malik Willis.
Let me ask you a question that I've heard. So a couple people have asked me what I thought of them. Of course, I'm not at these practices, so I can't really answer. But someone asked me, has Malik Willis had problems throwing to his left side of the field?
It's not problems as much as it's different. So his arm angle change. I think Vrabel was actually asked about this. He doesn't care how a player executes, but they have to learn how to execute first before they can kind of like go outside of the. Like, for example, his arm slot drops when he's rolling to his left, his arm slot drops way down to throw it. And that's not something they're going to coach out of him if he's executing all the other stuff well, right? If your footwork's in the right place and you made the right read and you did everything correct, your shoulders and all that stuff, like that's kind of like Aaron Rodgers throws off platform all the time, but it's because he was so fundamentally trained first, he can then come back off of the footwork thing, if that makes sense. And so he does have trouble. Like to the left is definitely a trickier thing. His feet he needs to be quicker on the turnarounds on the play action and that kind of stuff. And so when he's rolling, which they're going to use him a lot to do, that is the one area where it looks like a different type of throw. He's if you're talking about standing in the pocket, he still has a long way to go. If you're watching him do team drills, every now and then you're like, that was an awesome throw. And it's like an over the middle to a tight end or something. And then you're going, that's a killer throw. Most of the time during OTAs and rookie camp, he was learning. Yeah. It wasn't pretty, but it kind of was designed not to be pretty. So I would say, yes, that is, I can't confirm.
Okay.
Can't confirm. Quickly on the stadium here. There is I guess there's a note that the city or some people in the city are going to commission a $200,000 study to check on these costs. So the quick and dirty of all of this is that they are estimating, the Titans have estimated that around $1.8 billion in costs, overruns, upkeep, management is already into the contract that the city already owes. And that there's a $2.2 billion estimate for building a new stadium for the Titans. So that's kind of where the numbers are on estimates. There are some people in the city government that are saying, we don't know if we believe you on this. And the spokesperson for the mayor's office has said over and over again, the specific numbers don't matter on this. And I hate to agree with him on this, but I do. Whether or not it's $1.4 billion or $1.8 billion in costs that are on the hook, or if it's 2.2 versus 1.9, or like, we are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in some way, shape, or form, one way or the other. I don't see the value in spending $200,000 to get an independent study done to confirm some estimates. Like, in construction that this is why you go to the Kingston Group, by the way, buildkg.com, because they'll give you the exact dollar figure beforehand. Not quite building a stadium, but whatever. There's going to be little tweaks and changes and overruns, and things change in construction. It's just part of the job. Why do we need to spend a couple $100,000 of our money to confirm an estimate? That part I don't understand. Like, it's going to cost a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
And full stop.
The only way this $200,000 commission for this study is worth it is if you're going to go from a $2.2 billion new stadium to a $1 billion repair.
Right.
Okay. So you did technically save about 800 or 900,000. Technically, when you take the 200,000 off, you're not saving that much, but a $600,000 savings would be worth the $200,000 study investment. But that's only if you go that route. If you don't go that route, then you just pay $200,000 to still go with the new stadium, right? Like, I mean,
I totally agree. This is
I
so
know,
mind numbing. It's so stupid.
it's
Like,
ridiculous that they feel like they have to double check, and I feel like this is from a political strategy standpoint, I feel like this is an odd move for a guy that's about to come up for re-election, that he's going to go spend $200,000 for something that's probably not going to amount to anything.
now, from what I understand, it's not him that's pushing it.
Okay.
The mayor's office is pushing back on this and saying,
Gotcha.
no, we're going to trust their estimate because you know what? It's a shit ton of money no matter what. Like,
right.
not going to spend more money to find out that it was a little less or a little more. To your point, like, if they're going to make a much bigger strategic decision and save large chunks of money, then it might be worth it. But right now we are talking about, I don't even know, $200,000 to study.
I mean, you got to go from 1.8 billion to 1 billion. Like, to me, that's okay. You're saving $800 million.
That's worth it
for $200,000.
Totally worth
it. Totally worth it. Even if you decide to go that route, go the repair route, and you just saved a bunch of money.
So I guess this is council member Sean Parker that is sort of pushing the story. And there's going to be, again, this is what's going to happen in this debate with the stadium, is it's going to be divided into these factions of people and some of them have really good interests at heart. Some of them are just sort of selfishly reacting to stuff. Some of them are trying to get elected again. Like, everyone has their own motives. You know, business owners have their own motive. They're a stakeholder. Everybody kind of has their own motives. We as sports fans and football fans have our own motives here. Everyone's a biased party in this. So we hundreds of thousands of dollars on an estimate, to me, doesn't make any sense. So when we talked to Butch Spiridon on this, by the way, if you listen to the show on Thursday, we were right. We were not going to get a FIFA spot, so we didn't get that. But August and September is when these numbers are going to start rolling out, and that $2.2 billion is going to be broken down in further information because the mayor's office wants to get this done before the election year. That's what you need to know. So when you get more information about this, then we'll have better dollar figures to talk about. I don't need give me the $200,000. I'll tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
I'll get my guys at Kingston Group to look at the estimate, and they'll do a line item thing and they'll figure it all out. So Cooper's against this. So just to be sure on that, that spending figure. So there you go. There's your Titan Stadium update. You saw a story about the Texas A&M Aggies that caught your eye.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up today.
It's kind of crazy that Wall Street Journal came out with this article basically saying that Qatar and China and even some of Russia is investing foreign dollars into engineering schools and all this kind of stuff, which to me, it kind of leaves the Texas A&M football team exposed, because we've already heard that they are spending, $30 million in NIL money and all this stuff. Now I'm kind of thinking here, this is a little conspiracy theory kind of fluke, but it's not really too far-fetched when you get into this article. How much of that money is coming from the foreign power or whatever? And it's not that there's necessarily anything they've done against the rules,
right? Because
the rules are pretty flexible, right? But it's very interesting that you had Jimbo Fisher be on this high horse, and then he kind of backed off the high horse and kind of backed down a little bit as more of the SEC meetings went on. And then about a week and a half later, after the SEC meetings, here comes the story.
I think I don't want to say you're grasping at conspiracy straws, because I don't think that's true. I think the report, I would love to see this report for all schools in the SEC, because I'm willing to bet you, because what people don't understand.
Why do you think it's just Texas A&M
that this story has come out?
Yeah, because wouldn't you think that? Okay, let me ask you a question. Because if you're the Wall Street Journal investigator reporter on this, right? Wouldn't you want to be the one to break the lid off a few schools instead of just one? Which makes me think maybe Texas A&M.
So
maybe everybody's getting a little bit, but Texas A&M is getting a lot.
They got $700 million, but it's also over like a large period of time, from like 95 to 2022. It looks so. This is an education department funded and sort of spearheaded investigation into, I think, the education department writ large. So maybe they just didn't find any other schools doing this, in which case it is more interesting to me, like to your point. That's why I'd like to know, like, all right, Tennessee had this amount, or Alabama had this amount, or
Nobody's really talking
Harvard
about
had this amount. No, and it's
which is also interesting to me.
So we just watched the U.S. Open. We know that this LIV tour, LIV tour is super. The dollars is basic blood money from the Saudis. We've got the Saudis sports washing their identity by owning EPL teams, right? They own Newcastle, the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. Like we see this all the time from bad actors on the international stage that want to spend a ton of money on sort of sports washing their image. This would be like Tony Soprano owning the Titans and like spending a ton of money on like the Boys and Girls Club or something like that. Like just like, I'm going to make us look good in the public eye because no one's really studying all the bodies we've buried in the Cumberland or whatever. Right. And so I think there's a lot of that happens just in general. There's also a lot of foreign involvement in our country. Like when it comes to lobbyists, like these countries, Russia, China, Qatar, like they're pouring. FIFA's corrupt. Like the IOC is corrupt. Like they're all just taking massive payouts from these people. And what are they? They're not just not getting anything in return.
Right.
like Texas A&M gets $700 million from China, Qatar, and Russia for nothing.
Right.
They're not getting that money for nothing. Like, don't I'm not an idiot here, right?
No.
So I want to know what's the benefit, and if it's tweaking education to make sure the people are engineering things, or if they're training Chinese students that come back and work in China. Like, I don't know what the payoff is. That's what I understand lobbyist payoff, because then you could change like legislation that affects your country back home. I don't understand the $1 billion into the University of Tennessee or whatever. I don't understand what that gets you.
I find it interesting that's just right now, just Texas A&M.
I think it's directly tied. I think Jimbo Fisher is going out on the recruiting trail and he is saying to people, we have oil money, baby. And it's not just Texas oil money. It's Middle East Texas oil money. And we can pay you if you come to A&M.
That'd be interesting.
Man.
That would be interesting.
Sports washing is one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. Congrats to Matt Fitzpatrick on a fantastic finish to the US Open. And like, I didn't miss Phil Mickelson at all.
No,
I love him. I like Phil a lot. I just don't, if you're going to take all that money from somebody else and know that it's bad money.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I don't have any sympathy for you. So, all right. That about does it, I think, for us. Anything else? Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. Cast Collective Studio. That's cast_collective on Instagram. Make sure you check that out. You got buildkg.com, the Kingston Group, our title sponsor here on A Football Show. You got YouTube channel notifications. You got BroadwaySportsMedia.com. You got Football and Other Efforts Pod. Big episode this week for you guys. You got all of the pods for Full 40 Sports, of course, as well. Fringe Element, Gold Standard, Club and Country, Lamestream Sports, all that great stuff. We're going to have I'll tease. We'll tell you who's coming up on Thursday on the Friday episode of Lamestream Sports, but you Titans fans are going to want to hear this one. So that's a tease of a tease.
Tease of a tease.
I don't think
that's a tease.
I don't know if that's a good business practice or not. We'll see. That just about does it for us. Thanks for hanging out with us. Rate, review, subscribe, share the show. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday. For Zach, I'm Braden. This has been A Football Show.